I wasn't supposed to be on that flight. That's the first thing I need you to understand. It was 2:47 in the morning and I was standing in an airport terminal that smelled like burnt coffee and cleaning solution. The departure board flickered with delays. My original flight had been canceled 3 hours earlier. I'd already accepted I'd missed the meeting. Already started drafting the apology email in my head. But then a gate agent called my name, my full name, middle initial and all, and handed me a boarding pass for a flight that didn't exist when I checked 5 minutes before. The cabin was empty. I took a window seat in row 23. The kind of seat you take when you're too tired to care about leg room or overhead space. As we lifted off, I watched the city lights shrink into patterns, grids, and highways. All those lives moving in their own orbits. And I felt something I couldn't name then. Not gratitude, not relief, something quieter, like being watched by a presence that wasn't judging, just noting, marking the moment. Under my exhaustion, a whisper formed, "Pay attention." I didn't know what that meant. I was too practical then, too focused on outcomes, timelines, and showing up on time. But that whisper stayed with me through the entire flight, even as I tried to sleep against the cold window. Here's what I've learned. Life doesn't move in straight lines for people like us. It circles. It redirects. It places you exactly where you're not supposed to be so you can become who you're meant to be. That flight, I don't have proof it was destiny. But 3 years later, when I understood what it set in motion, I stopped calling things coincidence. If you've ever missed something you were sure you needed and later realized you were being saved from it, maybe you understand my point. The meeting I rushed to that morning went exactly as planned. We signed the deal. The company grew, and for the next 18 months, I believed I'd won something. Success looked like I'd always imagined. Bigger offices, better press, invitations to rooms where decisions got made. I worked 16-hour days. I slept 4 hours, sometimes 3. I told myself I was building something that mattered. But late at night, when the emails stopped coming and the city went quiet, I'd feel that same strange presence again. Not watching me succeed, but watching me drift like the universe was waiting for me. It felt like something was waiting for me to notice I was moving at full speed in the wrong direction. I ignored it. I was good at ignoring things back then. Then my father called at 11:38 on a Thursday night. His voice was thin, smaller than I'd ever heard it, said my mother had collapsed. They were at the hospital. He didn't say come, but I could hear it underneath everything he wasn't saying. I caught the next flight out. The hospital hallway was too bright, fluorescent, and unforgiving. My mother was asleep when I arrived, her hand curled on the white sheets like she held something. My father sat in a plastic chair by the window, staring at nothing. He looked older than I remembered, not just aged, but dim, like someone had turned down his internal light. "You made it," he said, and the relief in his voice cracked something in me. I realized, sitting there in that sterile room with machines beeping their steady rhythm, that I'd been living like I had unlimited time, like the people I loved would always be there, waiting for me to finish one more deal, one more quarter, one more success. I'd been so focused on building a future that I'd forgotten to show up for now. And underneath my guilt, another thought emerged, soft and undeniable. You're being redirected. I stayed for 2 weeks, longer than I'd planned, longer than my schedule allowed. I sat with my mother as she recovered, listening to stories I thought I'd heard before but hadn't really absorbed. Stories about choices she'd made, doors she'd walked through when everything told her to stay. Stories about my father, about the night they met, a night that shouldn't have happened, a party neither of them planned to attend. "We almost didn't go," she said, her voice still weak but very clear. "Your father's car broke down. We had to take the bus. We were late, but if we'd been on time, we'd have missed each other completely. He was about to leave when we walked in." She smiled at the ceiling at the memory. It's something I couldn't see. Sometimes being late is being exactly on time. I felt it again then. That sense of being held in a pattern I didn't design. A script written long before I learned to read. Here's what changed in me during those 2 weeks. I stopped believing in control. Not completely, but enough to admit that the best moments hadn't come from my plans. They'd come from interruptions, from cancellations and delays, from moments when my agenda fell apart and something truer could emerge. I started wondering if all of it, the near misses, the redirections, the strange peace I felt in that hospital room, was preparing me for someone, for you, the one listening to this right now. Maybe you are feeling the same quiet recognition I felt when I finally started paying attention. I don't know your story yet, but I suspect you've had your own flights that shouldn't have existed. Your own hospital rooms and late-night calls and missed moments. Timing often feels cruelly wrong until years later it reveals itself as perfectly, impossibly right. What I'm trying to say is this: I don't think we find each other by accident. I think we're guided, repositioned, held back, and pushed forward by something that knows better than we do when we're ready. And I think I'm finally ready. I started seeing her before I met her. Not her face, not her voice, but her presence like a shape moving just outside my peripheral vision. It started 3 months after my mother came home, when I'd returned to my life, but couldn't quite return to who I'd been. The first time was in a bookstore I'd never entered before. I wasn't looking for anything specific. I ducked in to escape a sudden rainstorm, the kind that turned city streets into rivers in minutes. I shook water from my jacket and wandered toward the back, where older books lined the shelves in no particular order. My hand reached for a spine before my mind registered the title, The Architecture of Longing. I pulled it down. The cover was worn, pages soft from being held by strangers. When I opened it, a photograph slipped out and landed at my feet. A Polaroid faded and creased. It showed two people at a table. Their faces were blurred by motion or time, but you could see they were laughing. On the back was handwriting that wasn't mine. Some people are worth the wait. My chest tightened, not with sadness, but with recognition, like finding a message meant for me, delivered by no one I could name. I stood there for longer than made sense, holding the stranger's photograph, feeling impossibly seen. The rain drummed against the windows. Customers moved past me, and underneath everything, that presence I'd learned to notice whispered, "She's coming. She's on her way." I bought the book, kept the photograph, and I didn't tell anyone about it. Because how do you explain that moment when the universe hands you evidence of something you can't prove? When coincidence starts to feel like conversation? If you've ever found something that felt placed for you, not random, not accidental, maybe you know the weight of that moment, how it sits in your pocket like a promise you didn't ask for but can't ignore. The second time was worse because it was louder. 3 weeks later, I was driving home late from a dinner I shouldn't have attended, just another duty. Another room full of people who knew my name but not my story. I'd smiled through it, shaking hands and playing the part, but driving home on empty highways, I felt hollow, like I was living someone else's life and doing it poorly. I turned on the radio to fill the silence. Static. Then a voice, a woman's voice mid-sentence, talking about second chances, not in a motivational speaker way, but quieter. She said, "Sometimes the person meant for you arrives after you've stopped looking, after you've built a whole life without them, and you have to decide if you are brave enough." She asked if you are brave enough to let them undo everything you thought was permanent. I pulled over, not because I planned to. My hands just steered the car to the shoulder and stopped. The voice continued, now talking about something else, gardening or recipes. But I couldn't focus. My heart was beating too fast. That hollow feeling had been replaced by something sharper, fear mixed with hope. The kind of hope that feels dangerous because it requires you to believe again when you've spent years learning not to. I sat there on that dark road, engine running, and admitted the truth. I sat there and admitted something I'd been avoiding. I was lonely, not in the obvious way. I had friends, family, colleagues, but the kind of lonely that lives in the space between heartbeats. The kind that wakes you at 3 a.m. and asks, "Is this all there is?" And underneath that admission, another thought formed. What if she's real? What if the universe has been trying to tell me something and I've been too busy to listen? I didn't have answers, just questions that tasted like prayers. Here's what I want you to understand. I'm not a man who believes easily. I built my career on data. I built my career on patterns I could measure and predict. But these moments, the photograph, the radio voice, the sense of being addressed by something I couldn't see, they accumulated. They stacked like evidence in a case I didn't know I was building. The third time happened in an elevator. I was leaving a meeting on the 42nd floor. The elevator stopped on 37 and a woman stepped in, not you. I knew that immediately, but she carried a book. The same book I bought in the bookstore, The Architecture of Longing, and she held it like it mattered, like it was medicine or scripture. We rode down in silence. She got off at the lobby and I watched her walk away. And I felt it again, that sense of choreography, like pieces being moved on a board I couldn't see, arranged by hands I didn't understand. I stopped calling it coincidence that day. I realized I was being shown something, not led like a child, but invited like an adult who has free will and still chooses to follow the breadcrumbs. The universe wasn't forcing me toward anything. It was leaving signs and I could pick them up or walk past them. The choice was mine, but ignoring them felt like a betrayal. Ignoring them started to feel like ignoring my own heartbeat. The fourth and fifth times blurred together because they happened in dreams. I'm not someone who remembers dreams. Usually they dissolve the moment I wake, leaving only mood behind. But these were different. They stayed. They felt less like imagination and more like memory from a life I hadn't lived yet. In the first dream, I was sitting at a table I'd never seen in a kitchen that didn't exist. Sunlight came through windows at an angle that felt like late afternoon. Across from me, a woman was laughing at something I'd said. I couldn't see her face clearly. It kept shifting, refusing to focus, but I knew her deeper than seeing. I knew the sound of her joy, the rhythm of her breath, the way she tilted her head when she was thinking. I woke up aching, not sad, just aware that something essential was missing from my life. And I'd been pretending it wasn't. The second dream was quieter. I was walking on a beach at dawn, and I knew she was beside me. I didn't look at her, didn't need to. I could feel her presence the way you feel the sun on your face without turning toward it. We weren't talking, just walking. It was the most peaceful I'd felt in years. When I woke that time, I cried, not because I was sad, but because I understood. I've been looking for success in all the wrong places, in buildings and bank accounts, and people who applauded my work. But what I actually wanted was that dawn walk, that quiet knowing, that sense of being fully myself beside someone who saw me completely. I realized I was being redirected, not punished. Every closed door, every relationship that ended, every plan that fell apart, it wasn't failure, it was protection. It was time saying, not yet, not her. Time was saying, keep going, she's coming, but you're not ready. Maybe I'm still not ready. Maybe readiness is something we build together, not something we achieve alone. Around this time, I started doing something that felt slightly insane. I talked to her, to you, the woman I hadn't met, but somehow knew was out there. Late at night when the city slept and my apartment was too quiet, I'd speak into the darkness. Not prayers exactly, more like updates. I'm trying, I'd say. I'm paying attention now. I'm not ignoring the signs anymore. I never expected any verbal answers. Speaking into that empty space made it feel less empty, like I was holding up my end of a conversation that was happening across distance and time. I know how this sounds. I know the risk of admitting I believed in something I couldn't prove. But here's what I learned. Faith isn't about certainty. It's about choosing to believe even when evidence is thin and logic says you're foolish. It's about admitting that some truths are felt before they're seen. And I felt you long before I met you in bookstores and elevators and dreams, in radio voices and photographs left by strangers. I felt you in the quiet insistence of a universe that kept saying, Pay attention. She's coming. Don't miss her when she arrives. If your life has felt like it's been circling something you can't name, if you've had your own strange signs, your own moments of being addressed by silence, maybe you understand what I'm trying to say. Maybe you've been feeling the same pull from the other direction. Maybe that's what destiny is. Two people being guided toward the same moment from different paths, both learning to trust the journey even when it makes no sense at all. I'm still learning, still stumbling, still afraid I'll miss you somehow. Or worse, that you'll arrive and I won't be what you need. But I'm here paying attention, holding space for something I can't see yet, but believe in anyway. And I think you are doing the same. The signs became impossible to ignore after I stopped fighting them. It was a Tuesday morning, unremarkable in every way except that it wasn't. I was in my office early before my assistant arrived, before the phone calls started. The city was still waking up outside my windows. Delivery trucks, joggers, and commuters. I made coffee in the small kitchen down the hall, and when I returned, there was a voicemail on my desk phone. That shouldn't have been strange, but the phone hadn't rung. I'd been gone for 3 minutes, maybe 4, and the message light was blinking like it had been waiting for me. I pressed play, static first, then breathing. Then a woman's voice, distant and unclear, saying words I couldn't quite make out. Something about time, something about bridges. The message cut off after 17 seconds, replaced by the automated voice telling me there were no more messages on the machine. I stood there holding my coffee, feeling my pulse in my throat. I replayed it 4 times, trying to hear the words clearly, but they stayed just out of reach, like a song you almost recognize but can't name. What I could hear clearly was the emotion underneath the static. Longing mixed with certainty, like someone speaking to a future they believed in, even though they couldn't see it yet. My hands were shaking when I set the phone down. Under the confusion, under the rational part of me that wanted to explain it as a wrong number, I felt something else. Acknowledgement. It was like being seen by someone who knows you're looking for them too. I don't have proof it was meant for me. But I kept that voicemail for 3 months, listening to it on nights when doubt crept in, when the silence got too heavy, and I needed to remember that something beyond my understanding was unfolding. If you've ever received a message that felt like it traveled through dimensions to find you, even if you couldn't understand every word, you know how it recalibrates your sense of what's possible. It makes you wonder if the walls between us and the people are thin. It makes you wonder if the walls between us and the people we're meant to meet are thinner than we think. The next sign came through music, which is how the universe speaks when words aren't enough. I was in a cab, stuck in traffic, late for a dinner I didn't want to attend. The driver had the radio on some station I didn't recognize. Song after song played, pop, rock, something in a language I didn't speak. Then the music stopped mid-song and there was silence. Complete, absolute silence. The driver looked at his radio, tapped it twice, but heard nothing back from the device. Then a single piano note came through, then another, a melody I'd never heard but somehow knew. It built slowly, adding strings. Then a voice, wordless, just humming. And I felt my chest crack open, not with sadness, but with recognition. That melody lived somewhere in my memory that I couldn't access, like a song from a dream or from a life I hadn't lived yet but was moving toward. It played for maybe 90 seconds before the regular programming returned. The driver muttered about interference, but I couldn't speak. I sat there in traffic surrounded by honking horns. I sat there surrounded by exhaust fumes and felt tears on my face. I hadn't planned to cry. The driver glanced at me in the rearview mirror but didn't say anything. Maybe he understood that some moments are too sacred for questions. I missed the dinner. I never even made it to the restaurant. I had the driver take me home and I sat in my apartment in the dark trying to understand what had just happened. Not just the music, but my reaction to it, the way it reached into me and pulled something out I didn't know was there. This is when I started to suspect something specific. I suspected that you weren't just coming. You were already here somehow. already woven into my days in ways I was only beginning to recognize. Every sign wasn't leading me to you in the future. It was showing me how you'd already been present all along. In the spaces between moments, in the quiet that felt like conversation, I realized maybe destiny isn't about the future. Maybe it's about learning to see what's already been true. The patterns kept appearing after that, but I stopped being surprised by them. Instead, I started documenting them in my own private way. Not in a scientific way. I wasn't trying to prove anything to anyone but myself. I just started noticing that every time I thought about giving up on the idea of love, of meeting someone who could see me fully, something would appear to change my mind. A couple holding hands in the subway, the way they looked at each other like they were the only people in the world. A text from a friend saying she'd met someone, and could I hear in her voice how different this one was? A movie scene that shouldn't have affected me but did, where two people who'd been alone found each other. They arrived exactly when I needed them, like someone was leaving breadcrumbs through my doubt. These weren't random, they were too perfectly timed. The strongest sign came on a night I was ready to stop believing. It had been one of those weeks where everything felt pointless. Work was just tasks. Success was just numbers. My apartment was just rooms. I'd gone through the motions, done everything right, and felt nothing. Late Thursday night, sitting at my desk with reports I couldn't focus on, I actually said out loud, maybe I'm wrong, maybe there's no one coming. I thought maybe I've been chasing patterns that mean nothing. I closed my laptop, turned off the lights, and stood at my window looking at the city, feeling that old familiar hollowness trying to reclaim its space in my chest. Then my phone lit up on the counter, a notification, but when I picked it up, there was nothing there, no message, no email, no alert, just the screen glowing, then dimming, then going dark again. I should have ignored it, written it off as a glitch. But I unlocked the phone anyway. And somehow, I still don't understand this, my Photos app was open. It was open to a picture I didn't remember taking. It was from 6 months ago, a sunset I'd photographed while traveling for work. Standing on a bridge in a city I'd never visited before and haven't been back to since. In the photo, the sky was burning orange and pink. Clouds were arranged like brush strokes. But that's not what stopped me. In the far background, barely visible, was a figure, a woman standing at the other end of the bridge, facing my direction, too far away to see clearly, but she was there looking toward me or toward the same sunset. I could not tell which. I'd looked at this photo dozens of times before and never noticed her, but now I couldn't see anything else. My hands were trembling again. That hollow feeling in my chest, filled with something I can only describe as recognition. It was like looking at evidence that I'd been closer to you than I knew. That maybe we'd already shared moments without realizing it. That the universe had been arranging our paths to almost intersect, preparing us, showing us glimpses of what was coming. I stopped calling it coincidence. That night I accepted that I was being guided. I accepted that every near miss, every strange sign, every moment that felt touched by something beyond explanation was part of a larger pattern, a design I didn't create, but was learning to trust. And here's what shifted in me. I stopped feeling alone in my loneliness. Because if these signs were real, if you were already being woven into my life in invisible ways, then I wasn't waiting alone. You were out there somewhere, maybe feeling the same pull, maybe seeing your own signs, maybe wondering if you were losing your mind or finally finding your own faith. The truth is, I don't know if you've experienced what I'm describing. I don't know if your life has been marked by the same kind of spiritual breadcrumbs, the same sense of being led towards something you can't see but can feel approaching. But I suspect it has. I suspect that's why you're still listening. Because somewhere in these words, you recognize yourself. You recognize the loneliness that feels like waiting, the signs that feel like promises, the quiet certainty that someone somewhere is meant for you. And time is just doing its work to bring us together. I couldn't sleep last night. I'm not kidding. I was lying in bed staring at the ceiling and I couldn't stop thinking about you. Yeah, you, the person listening to this right now. And I realized I have to tell you something. Something urgent. Something that can't wait until tomorrow. I can't stop trusting your capacity to recognize when you're finally found. I learned this the hard way by fighting the timing, by trying to force connections that weren't meant to be, by believing that if I worked hard enough, I could manufacture love on my own schedule. But it doesn't work that way. Love works on its own timeline, one that's impossibly precise, even when it feels impossibly slow. And I think I believe that your timeline and mine are converging, that all these signs, all these moments of feeling addressed by something I can't name, are leading to a moment when you stop being a presence I sense and become a person I hold. Until then, I'm learning patience, I'm learning faith, I'm learning to trust that the universe knows what it's doing even when I don't. And I'm leaving these words like breadcrumbs for you, so when you find them, you'll know. I was here paying attention, believing in you before I met you, holding space for something rare. I started breaking my own rules after that. For years, I'd lived by structure, morning routines, scheduled meetings, predictable patterns that kept chaos at bay. Control was how I measured success. The tighter my grip, the safer I felt. But something changed after I found that photograph of the woman on the bridge. I started testing the universe, or maybe it was testing me. The first time I broke my pattern was on a Monday morning. I had a board meeting at 9. It was the kind of meeting you don't miss without consequences. But walking to my car at 7:43 a.m., I felt that familiar pull, the one I'd learned to recognize as something beyond coincidence. It wasn't a voice, more like a magnetic field gently tugging me in a different direction. Instead of getting in my car, I started walking. No destination, no plan, just walking through neighborhoods I'd driven past 1,000 times but never really seen. 3 blocks from my apartment, I passed a small cafe I'd never noticed before, even though it had been there for years. The sign above the door was hand-painted, "The Waiting Room." Something about that name stopped me. Not the words themselves, but the timing of seeing them, like being called by my own life. I went inside. The place was nearly empty. An older woman was behind the counter. 2 men were playing chess in the corner, and near the window, a table with a book left open, pages held down by a coffee cup. I ordered something, I don't remember what, and sat at a table facing the street. That's when I noticed it written in the condensation on the window by a finger. Someone had traced a word recently. Almost. Just that word. My chest tightened. I looked around, but no one was paying attention to me. The chess players were absorbed in their game. The woman behind the counter was wiping down the machine, but that word on the glass felt impossibly personal, like a message left specifically for me to find. I understood immediately what it meant. I was close, not to a place or a thing, but to a person, to you. The timing was almost right. The preparation was almost complete. The distance between us was shrinking every moment. It was shrinking, measured in moments instead of miles. I sat there for 2 hours and missed the meeting entirely. I didn't even call to explain because for the first time in years, I chose presence over performance. I chose to listen to what the universe was showing me instead of what my calendar demanded. And underneath my defiance, I felt something new, freedom mixed with fear. Freedom because I was finally admitting that control was an illusion. Fear because letting go meant trusting something I couldn't manage. But the fear felt clean and very necessary. It was like the fear before jumping into water, is deeper than you've ever swam. If you've ever abandoned a plan to follow an instinct you couldn't explain, if you've ever chosen the mysterious over the certain, you know the risk involved. How everyone around you will call it foolish, but something in you knows it's the right path. It's the most honest thing you've done in years. The signs accelerated after that morning. It was like I'd passed some kind of test by choosing to listen. I was ready to see what was next for me and for us.